All right, welcome back in here to Live and Now from Fox. I am Andy Mack. As yesterday we learned the jury was seated, 6 men, 6 women, for the trial involving the son of the sitting president, Hunter Biden, as he charged with 3 felonies stemming from a 2018 firearms purchase. For more on this, let's go out to Rich Edson that gets us up to speed as the first witness took the stand earlier today.
Hunter Biden returned to a Delaware courtroom Tuesday for opening statements in his federal firearms case. The First Lady, Jill Biden, once again here to support her stepson. Prosecutors opened, telling jurors, quote, "No one is above the law," as they allege Hunter lied on a federal gun form in 2018, swearing he was not a drug user. The defense says the gun form asks whether the buyer is a drug user, not whether they've ever been.
The form does not get into whether or not you've undergone treatment. The form is as ambiguous as it possibly could be written.
The president's son has pleaded not guilty to 3 felony charges. His attorney, Abby Lowell, says Hunter was in denial about his addiction, adding he was abusing alcohol, not drugs, when he bought a small handgun in 2018.
For a while, they were saying that they would argue that he had this brief moment of sobriety. But then Hunter Biden came in and reaffirmed that he was using drugs throughout this period.
After opening statements, prosecutors called FBI Special Agent Erika Jensen to the stand, who said her job was to tie Hunter's alleged addiction to the period when he bought the gun. She's one of several witnesses Special Counsel David Weiss's team plans to have testify.
Family members are going to testify against him. Bo Biden's wife is going to testify about throwing the gun away. And then there's the forensic evidence regarding the cocaine on the gun pouch.
Hunter Biden also faces federal tax-related charges in Los Angeles. That trial begins in September. In Wilmington, Rich Edson, Fox News.
All right, thank you so much. A lot to unpack with this trial. Opening statements, the first witness on the stand. I do want to bring into the conversation right now as we continue to cover this very, very closely. Jacqueline Goodman, a legal analyst here on Live Now from Fox. Thank you so much for joining us. And a lot to learn as we saw Jill Biden there as jury selection yesterday and then again today. Maybe what do we make of the first few days and what are we kind of watching closely here, Jacqueline?
Hi, thanks for having me. Yeah, I mean, really interesting case, right? Because what he's charged with are 2 counts of making a false statement in the documents necessary to obtain a license for a gun or to obtain possession of the gun. And then thirdly, the illegal possession of the gun. And so there's a few issues with regard to whether he, at the time that he filled out that form, was intentionally misleading the government as to a material fact. So the question, and is rightly pointed out in that lead up, is really important. What is the wording exactly, and what was going on in the mind of Hunter Biden at the time that he filled it out, if he filled it out, because we also know that the gun owner fills out part of those forms regularly. So if they can show that he was the one that filled it out, what was his intention at the time that he filled it out? And I think anybody and lots of folks have people in their families, people that they know who've been addicts. Anytime, I mean, Hunter Biden had just undergone rehabilitation as well when he made that decision to buy the firearm. So we know that addicts, when they've gone through rehabilitation, believe they're not addicts anymore, and they're never going to use again. And they may be wrong 5 minutes from that assessment, but it's a matter of what was going on in his mind at that time.
Yeah, and prosecutors are going to try to paint the picture and kind of show what was going on in Hunter's mind by different evidence, different testimony as well. And speaking of evidence, there was a moment outside of court that we're going to talk about the infamous laptop coming up as Melissa Cohen Biden, the wife of Hunter Biden, lashed out at the former Trump White House aide during a Tuesday appearance in court to support her husband, who has been charged with those felony counts. Her remarks were directed at Garrett Ziegler, who was sued by Hunter Biden last year for publishing contents of that infamous laptop. And I think this is going to be a lot of conversation talking about the laptop and the evidence on it. Maybe how scandalous will some of these pieces of evidence be, and how damning will they be for Biden, but also Joe Biden, his father?
A lot to unpack in that question. Yeah. First of all, it is, and you're right, it's really important information. It's this pretty powerful stuff, but we don't yet know what exactly was on that laptop. One of the most damning things about Hunter Biden's case, and really the way it comes from the beginning, the inception of this case, is because Hunter Biden himself wrote a book and talked about all of the things that he's being accused of now. So, is it through the lens of retrospect that he sees that he was in fact an addict at the time that he bought the gun, and he talks about the things that were on his laptop later. What exactly is found on the laptop? All of those questions, none of us actually know the answers to. I mean, that's part of the evidence, and we'll see that unfold. But certainly cause for an interest. The second part of your question, really speaks to what are the political ramifications of this. And it's hard to say. I mean, I'm not a political analyst, but a conviction like with Donald Trump is never going to be something that someone who is seeking office, high office particularly, is going to be happy about. The difference here, I guess, is that President Biden is not affirming, there's no evidence that he has anything to do with his son's actions. And while he does say that, it's a difficult place for him to be, he says that he would not pardon him if he was convicted of any of these things. So all of those issues, I think, are really difficult to prognosticate right now.
Yeah, that is a very good point. We'll keep our focus there on the legal side of it, inside of the courtroom. The first witness on the stand, Erika Jensen, taking the stand as well. Maybe what did we learn from her today, and maybe how much is the defense working, and kind of what's the mindset of the defense?
Clearly the defense is saying he is an addict. He is someone who didn't mean to, that he wasn't necessarily using drugs at that time. They recognize their Achilles heel is in some ways their strength as well. And in some ways, that's the best way to defend a case, is to take the worst fact that the prosecution has and use it for you, use it against them, and say, yes, in fact, I was an addict and I'm sorry about that. And I've rehabilitated myself, and look at how I am faulted, just like all of us are faulted. And I think that the testimony that's coming out in the prosecution's witness is certainly going to be attacked in that way from the Biden camp.
Yeah, that is a very interesting kind of insight there, to take the most damning evidence and potentially use it on the other way. As we move through this trial, different witnesses, different evidence going to be presented. What are we looking forward as this trial continues to move on? What's kind of the main focus that you're eyeing here?
Well, really about whether or not they can show that Hunter Biden himself made the statement, wrote the information on the form himself, and whether at the time that he did it, he believed something different, that he was intending to mislead the government in order to obtain possession of that weapon. And I think that that's not the easiest thing in the world to show, but it's really anybody's guess.
Yeah, that is a very good point. And of course, the judge already ruling several times on different of the verbiage in some of this language as well of these forms back in 2018. Jacqueline, anything else that you'd like to add before I let you go? Because this is a very, very interesting trial, to say the least.
Well, the defense argument that it was a constitutional issue, that the whole idea itself of can we deny people the right to own a weapon based on some sort of amorphous idea of whether they used drugs and when, and were they an addict, and who's deciding that, and what does that exactly mean? I mean, those are very kind of fuzzy ideas, and this actually could play out to give us guidance in future cases. The court ruled against him at this point, but it certainly could be an appellate issue should the jury go the wrong way, according to the defense.
All right, my last question before I let you go, because I just thought of this because we were talking yesterday a lot about the jury selection, and there were several people on it that had family members or someone close to them deal with drug addiction as well. Maybe how much will the defense be playing to several of these jurors that might be empathetic to Hunter Biden?
100%. 100%. A defense wants people to sympathize with Hunter Biden and to feel like this is not an intentional act. This is not a criminal act. This is part and parcel of what addiction is. We understand that recovery is not a straight line. It's, sort of a jagged line, and hopefully the trajectory is good. And it appears that way. And that's, I think, the way Hunter Biden's team is going to be portraying him, as the addict in your family that you love that had a few false starts.
Yeah, that is a very good point. And just to play off of that as well, as they kind of paint this picture of, although he wrote in his memoir that he was an addict at one time, do you think that limits potentially what could come down in terms of the sentencing if and when he is guilty or not guilty?
I think you make a really great point. Some of his own words are going to be used against him. At least the prosecution would want to do that should he be convicted. But again, there's all this ambiguity about timing and what it really means and what is an addict. And, at what point are you no longer an addict? Is it when you decide you're never going to use again? And if you falter later, did that make you a liar before? what is really the parameters of all of these statements? And so I think looking actually at his own words is going to give us a lot of guidance in that way if a court is ever finding itself trying to divine the correct sentence.
All right, well, we are just getting going here in this trial. Jacqueline Goodman, thank you again for your insight here on Live Now from Fox. We appreciate your time.
Always nice to be here. Thank you.